who say snarky things, especially anonymously to you, you can't tell if they're representative at all. And they're likely not. And you know, that very narrow bandwidth, that 140 or 280 characters, might also be something that really facilitates angry, impulsive responding. And so we don't understand any of this psychologically.
I mean, I think there's something else happening too, and that is that both Twitter and Facebook, all social media, is basically something different in human history in the sense that it's just a crowd without a purpose. So it's a crowd looking for a purpose, meaning that throughout human history, when you actually had to have face-to-face interactions with people, the only reason you would show up in a crowd is because the crowd had a purpose. So where were you typically doing this? Is you were going to a church, right? Everybody was there to worship. Everybody was there with a common goal in mind, right? You were a member of the army, and so there's a common goal in mind. Anytime you were getting together, it was because there was a party, so everybody was there for the party. Twitter is legitimately people waking up and just, I want to interact with other humans. There are no other humans around. And so I'm here, and you're here, and we're all here. And look, somebody just said something. Ah, there's a common purpose. Let's jump on that. And then there's this backslapping effect of the person said something, and I mean, we all use Twitter, so we all know that if you are, the most dangerous thing about Twitter, if I could do anything with Twitter, I would get rid of the mentions tab. The reason being because if you are if you are just a human, it encourages bad behavior, especially because it encourages you to be looking and seeing how people are responding to you. Because as human beings, we're constantly looking to see how people are responding to us, and so this is
which is generally a good thing.
Right, it's generally a good thing, except that it's an ego machine.
Yes, so well, that's the downside.
Because one of the keys to being a good person is to recognize most people aren't thinking about you 95% of the time. Right, you're not that important as a human. And so in order for you to be important, you actually do something important. But because Twitter functions in such a way that all you get is that feedback loop, it encourages you more and more to look for more of that feedback. It makes you feel good. I mean, you get a little endorphin rush every time there's a nice comment about you. You're fresh for more nice comments. That doesn't happen in real life. There's never a situation in real life in which that happens. And when it does, it's a major life event. It's a wedding. It's a bar mitzvah. Right? It's something where people are collectively celebrating you. But on Twitter, everybody is collectively celebrating everybody else. And the people who issue the strongest opinions are the people who receive both the most condemnation and the most celebration.
So in a weird way, not that we want people to go into their bubbles, but are these town squares they're almost too big to actually ever function properly? So every week there's another story where Jack says, I'm going to get rid of the likes, or I'm going to get rid of follower counts. And they're always trying to float these ideas to manipulate how we all behave with each other. But in an odd way, having everyone from everywhere on these platforms really doesn't make sense in some bizarre way. I'm not saying that we should be in separate platforms.
Well, there's no community.
Yeah, because
which is Ben's point.
Right, so it's like we need something that has community, I think, but then the danger is that we end up in our little echo chambers.
Right, I mean, the need, it's fascinating because if you look in other places in the internet, just structurally, the way that the community works is a little bit different. The way that it works, or it used to work 10 years ago when people actually visited websites directly, was that you'd have something like a National Review The Corner, and it was a bunch of people, you know, like us, sitting around and discussing ideas back and forth, like a group blog. And it was restricted to the people who were discussing the ideas. And then below that,
or a video game board or anything else.
Exactly. And then below that, you'd have the comment section, which was all about those particular conversations. Because Twitter is fragmented, there's no actual conversation taking place on Twitter. There's me saying something and you responding to it, and me not responding to you mostly, and then me tweeting another thought, and then you responding to it. And the idea of having a long-form conversation
that you also don't have to take any responsibility for them, you know, especially if you're anonymous. And that also brings out the worst in people, you know, and the trolling phenomena. I mean, one of the things you notice about children, for example, is if children don't get enough good attention, they'll certainly go after bad attention, because the fundamental human currency is attention. And it's one thing to be hated, but it's another thing entirely to be ignored. And I would say, generally speaking, if you put people in a corner and you made them choose, you know, if they had knowledge that was transparent to themselves, you said, well, would you rather be ignored or hated? They'd take hated, because at least then you exist, because you exist, at least in some part, in your relationship to other people. And so some of the bad behavior is rewarded precisely for that reason, is that it does draw attention, and that does make you signify. I mean, you think about the people who do heinous crimes, like the school shooters, people like that, who do these things that are almost inconceivable. A huge part of the drive for that is fantasies about notoriety and the emergence from obscurity and anonymity. Even though it's notorious, it's hatred, the idea is, I'd rather be dead and infamous than alive and anonymous.
Yeah, which, by the way, you, I think, were one of the first websites to say, we're not going to publish these people's names, because then we're giving them exactly what they want.
Yeah, exactly. Like there have been, I don't want to take credit as like the first, because there are several, their names escape me, but there are other people who have been promoting this for a while. But yeah, I was late to it. We should have done it earlier.
And I talked to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation about that about 10 years ago, about the idea that publicizing the names of these killers is precisely one of the mechanisms that ensures that it will continue to happen, and there's no doubt about that. Now, how to mitigate against that is very complicated.